Woke receptionist humiliates Clint Eastwood without knowing he is the hotel owner. The glass doors of the luxurious Los Angeles hotel parted silently as Clint Eastwood stepped into the marble-floored lobby, his weathered leather bag hanging from one shoulder. Despite his legendary status in Hollywood, he had deliberately chosen to wear simple clothes, faded jeans, a plain cotton shirt, and comfortable walking shoes. His silver hair, usually styled for public appearances, was slightly disheveled from the long journey. The lobby buzzed with the elegant chaos typical of a high-end hotel. Wealthy guests in designer clothes swept past, while uniformed staff moved with practiced efficiency. What caught Clint's attention, however, were the subtle but unmistakable signs of progressive values: inclusive signage, staff wearing diversity pins, and modern artwork celebrating different cultures. "Welcome to our establishment, where we prioritize respect, diversity, and value every person, regardless of their appearance or background," announced the receptionist, her voice carrying a mix of warmth and conviction. Her blazer displayed several pins promoting social justice causes, and her posture radiated confidence in her progressive ideals. Clint nodded, studying her earnest expression. Throughout his long career, he'd witnessed countless changes in society, some of which he'd found challenging to embrace. But there was something about the receptionist's genuine commitment to her principles that intrigued him, even as it created a slight sense of discomfort. "Your room is ready, sir," she continued, sliding his keycard across the marble counter. "Would you like assistance with your bag?" Her eyes flickered to his simple luggage, then back to his face, clearly trying not to make assumptions based on his modest appearance. "I can manage," Clint replied, his voice carrying the gentle gruffness that had become his trademark. As he headed toward the elevators, he overheard the receptionist coaching a junior staff member about the importance of using inclusive language with guests. His room, though modest by the hotel's standards, still offered a stunning view of the Los Angeles skyline. Clint set his bag down and moved to the window, watching the afternoon sun paint the city in golden hues. The room's amenities reflected the hotel's evolution, traditional luxury blended with modern sensibilities. The usual hotel directory now included extensive sections on social responsibility and community engagement. Throughout the evening, Clint observed the hotel's operations with keen interest. In the restaurant, he noticed how older staff members, accustomed to traditional service standards, sometimes clashed subtly with younger employees who emphasized progressive values. The tension wasn't obvious to casual observers, but to Clint's experienced eye, it was clear that two different worldviews were attempting to coexist. A young staff member approached his table, her name tag indicating she was part of guest relations. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" she asked, her manner professional but warm. Like the receptionist, she wore several pins promoting social causes, yet her approach seemed more measured. "Actually," Clint responded, his voice low and thoughtful, "I'd be interested in hearing your perspective on working here." He gestured to the empty chair across from him, and after a moment's hesitation, she sat down. Their conversation revealed the complexities beneath the surface. She spoke of younger staff members advocating for rapid, progressive changes, while longtime employees worried about preserving the traditional elegance that had made the hotel famous. The challenge, she explained, was finding a balance that honored both perspectives. Back in his room that night, Clint stood at the window, contemplating what he'd observed. He'd come here with a purpose, though none of the staff knew yet that he was the hotel's new owner. What he'd found was more nuanced than a simple clash between old and new values. It was a story about people trying to navigate change while holding onto their core beliefs about hospitality and human dignity. As the city lights twinkled below, Clint began to formulate a plan. The solution wouldn't be about choosing between tradition and progress, but about finding a way to bring out the best in both. First, though, he needed to understand more about the people who called this hotel their workplace and the dreams and fears that drove them. The following morning, Clint arrived early at the hotel's employee cafeteria, having requested permission to observe the daily operations. He sat in a corner with a simple breakfast, watching the staff begin their day with practiced routines that spoke of years of refined service. The social dynamics were immediately apparent. The staff naturally divided into distinct groups. Traditional employees at one table, their conversations focused on maintaining the hotel's long-standing reputation for excellence. The younger, progressive staff at another, energetically discussing ideas for modernizing services, and a handful of employees who seemed to bridge both worlds. As Clint observed, he noticed how the progressive receptionist who had greeted him yesterday commanded attention among the younger staff, her passionate advocacy for social justice inspiring some while creating undercurrent of tension with others. The traditional staff, though professional, maintained a certain distance from these discussions. "These changes haven't been easy for everyone," a quiet voice commented. Clint turned to find one of the senior staff members standing nearby, coffee cup in hand. "Mind if I join you?" Clint gestured to the empty chair and the man sat down, introducing himself as the head of maintenance. Their conversation was interrupted by a heated discussion at a nearby table. A young housekeeper was advocating for changes to the hotel's traditional uniform policy, arguing that it needed to be more inclusive and gender-neutral. The debate quickly drew in others, with the progressive receptionist supporting the change, while veteran staff members defended the classic uniforms that had been a hotel trademark for decades. "It's been like this since the new management started. Implementing these progressive policies," the maintenance head explained quietly. "Both sides care deeply about the hotel, but they have very different visions of its future." Throughout the morning, Clint wandered through the hotel's service areas, observing how these tensions played out in daily operations. He saw how traditional staff sometimes struggled with new inclusive protocols, while younger employees occasionally dismissed the value of time-honored service traditions. In the laundry room, he witnessed a telling moment when an older employee had difficulty with a new eco-friendly washing system. Instead of offering help, a younger staff member simply sighed and walked away, muttering about resistance to change. The incident, though small, reflected a larger pattern of miscommunication and growing frustration between the two groups. The situation came to a head during an afternoon staff meeting about the hotel's upcoming summer events calendar. The progressive faction presented ideas for transforming traditional events into more inclusive celebrations, while longtime employees argued for preserving the classic elegance that had made the hotel famous. As the debate grew more heated, Clint noticed how some staff members remained silent, seemingly afraid to voice their opinions. The division wasn't just about policies or procedures, it was about identity, values, and the fear of being left behind in a rapidly changing world. A young server near him whispered to a colleague, "I understand both sides, but it feels like we have to choose one or the other. Why can't we find a middle ground?" That question resonated with Clint. As he walked back to his room that evening, he reflected on everything he'd observed. The hotel was caught between two powerful forces, the pull of tradition and the push for progress. Both sides had valid points, but their inability to truly hear each other was creating an environment where everyone felt somewhat threatened. In the privacy of his room, Clint began to formulate a plan. As the new owner, he had the power to make changes, but he understood that simply imposing solutions wouldn't address the deeper issues. The real challenge would be helping each person feel secure enough in their place at the hotel to open their minds to different perspectives. Looking out at the sunset painting the Los Angeles sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Clint knew that the next few days would be crucial. Before he could reveal his true identity, he needed to understand more about the key players in this drama, their hopes, their fears, and what truly motivated their positions. Only then could he hope to build a bridge between the past and the future that would make the hotel stronger than ever. As the third day of his stay began, Clint decided to take a more active role in understanding the hotel's dynamics. Instead of merely observing, he began engaging directly with staff members from both sides of the ideological divide, starting his morning by helping a bellhop with heavy luggage. "I don't need to do that, sir," the young man protested, but Clint waved away his concerns. As they worked together, the bellhop, Tom, began sharing his perspective on the hotel's situation. A recent hire, he appreciated the progressive policies, but worried about alienating traditional guests who valued classic service standards. Later that morning, Clint found himself in conversation with the progressive receptionist who had first greeted him. In the quiet of the early hour, she introduced herself properly as Sarah and revealed the personal experiences that had shaped her. Commitment to social justice. "Before I came here, I worked at hotels where people were judged solely on their appearance or status," she explained, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to create change, I would take it." Clint listened thoughtfully, noting how Sarah's dedication to inclusivity came from a genuine desire to prevent others from facing discrimination. Yet he also noticed her occasional dismissiveness toward more traditional perspectives, a blind spot in her otherwise compassionate worldview. Throughout the day, Clint engaged in similar conversations with staff across all departments. He helped the housekeeping team make beds, assisted the maintenance crew with minor repairs, and spent time in the kitchen learning about dietary accommodation challenges. Each interaction revealed new layers of complexity in the hotel's cultural transformation. In the afternoon, he witnessed a particularly telling incident in the lobby. An elderly guest had become agitated about recent changes to the hotel's dress code policy, which now allowed staff to express their identity more freely. The situation threatened to escalate until Maria, a veteran concierge, stepped in with a diplomatic approach that honored both the guests' concerns and the staff's dignity. "It's about finding the right words," Maria explained to Clint later as they shared coffee in the staff room. "We can maintain our highest standards of service while still embracing change. The key is helping everyone understand that respect can take many forms." This conversation sparked an idea in Clint's mind. That evening, he requested a meeting with the hotel's current management team, still maintaining his cover as a curious guest with extensive hospitality experience. To his surprise, they agreed to hear his thoughts. In a small conference room, Clint shared his observations about the divide between traditional and progressive values in the hotel. Instead of taking sides, he emphasized how both approaches ultimately aim to provide exceptional service and ensure human dignity. "The real challenge," he suggested, his voice carrying the weight of experience, "isn't choosing between tradition and progress. It's finding ways to combine the best of both worlds. The elegance and attention to detail that made this hotel famous can coexist with modern values of inclusivity and respect." The management team listened with increasing interest as Clint outlined specific examples he'd observed. He described how Maria's diplomatic handling of the lobby incident demonstrated that traditional service excellence could actually enhance progressive values rather than conflict with them. As the meeting concluded, Clint could sense a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. For perhaps the first time, people began to see the possibility of a middle ground, but he knew that one positive meeting wouldn't be enough to bridge years of accumulated tension. Back in his room that night, Clint reflected on the day's events while looking out at the city lights. He'd made progress in understanding the human stories behind the hotel's ideological divide, but the real challenge lay ahead. Tomorrow, he would need to take even bolder steps to bring these different worlds together. The solution, he realized, wasn't about forcing everyone to agree. It was about creating an environment where different perspectives could coexist and even strengthen each other. As he prepared for bed, Clint began mentally sketching out the next phase of his plan, one that would require careful timing and an even more personal approach. The fourth day at the hotel marked a crucial turning point in Clint's mission. As he made his way through the morning routine, he noticed subtle changes resulting from yesterday's conversations. Staff members from different factions were making small but meaningful attempts to understand each other's perspectives. During breakfast, Clint overheard Sarah, the progressive receptionist, engaging in a thoughtful discussion with James, one of the veteran staff members, about ways to preserve the hotel's elegant traditions while making them more inclusive. Though they didn't agree on everything, the tone was notably different from the heated debates of previous days. "Perhaps we could start by finding common ground," Sarah suggested, her usual assertiveness tempered with a new note of consideration. "What aspects of our traditional service do you think are most important to preserve?" James, initially surprised by the genuine inquiry, began sharing his experiences of how personal attention and refined service had helped guests feel truly valued, regardless of their background. As Clint listened, he noticed other staff members gradually joining the conversation, each adding their own perspectives to this unexpected dialogue. The morning's positive momentum, however, faced a significant test when an influential hotel critic arrived unannounced. Known for his traditional values and exacting standards, Vernon Blackwood had been reviewing luxury hotels for 3 decades. His presence sent immediate waves of tension through the staff. Clint watched as the progressive and traditional factions initially retreated to their usual positions. The younger staff worried about Blackwood's potential reaction to their inclusive policies, while veteran employees fretted about maintaining the classical standards he was known to prefer. Instead of letting this challenge divide the staff further, Clint saw an opportunity. He approached Sarah and James separately, sharing his thoughts on how they could turn this situation into a demonstration of the hotel's unique strength, its ability to combine time-honored hospitality with modern inclusivity. Throughout the Teehide day, Clint subtly guided the staff toward a collaborative approach to handling Blackwood's visit. He encouraged Sarah to share her innovative ideas about guest comfort with the traditional staff, while helping progressive employees appreciate the value of classical service techniques. The results were remarkable. When Blackwood requested a specific dietary accommodation, the kitchen team seamlessly combined traditional presentation with modern dietary awareness. When he mentioned feeling warm in the lobby, the maintenance staff adjusted the temperature using their new eco-friendly system with the same efficiency as the old controls. Even more telling was the staff's handling of a potentially awkward moment when Blackwood seemed uncomfortable with a gender non-conforming employee's appearance. Sarah stepped in with such graceful professionalism that she not only diffused the tension, but actually impressed Blackwood with her exceptional attention to his needs. By late afternoon, the hotel was operating with unprecedented harmony. Traditional and progressive staff members were communicating effectively, each contributing their strengths to create an atmosphere of sophisticated inclusivity. The positive energy was palpable, and even Blackwood seemed impressed by the seamless service. During dinner service, Clint observed from a discreet corner as the staff handled the evening rush with newfound confidence. The dining room hummed with activity as traditional service excellence merged naturally with modern sensibilities. Young servers learned classical techniques from veteran staff, while progressive employees shared insights about accommodating diverse guest needs. However, Clint knew that this momentum needed to be secured before it could fade. The time had come for the next phase of his plan, revealing his true identity as the hotel's owner. But first, he needed to ensure that the staff's recent cooperation wasn't just a temporary response to Blackwood's presence. That evening, he arranged for an all-staff meeting to be scheduled for the following morning. As he finalized the details, Clint reflected on how the hotel's journey mirrored larger changes in society. The challenge wasn't about choosing between preserving the past and embracing the future. It was about finding ways to let both strengthen each other. Looking out at the sunset painting the Los Angeles sky, Clint felt confident about tomorrow's revelation. The staff had shown that they could work together when given the chance. Now they just needed someone to help them see that their different perspectives weren't obstacles to overcome, but assets to embrace in creating something truly exceptional. The morning of the all-staff meeting arrived with an atmosphere of anticipation. The hotel's grand conference room slowly filled with employees from every department, their curious whispers echoing off the wood-paneled walls. Sarah, the progressive receptionist, sat near the front, while James and other traditional staff members gathered toward the back. The events of the previous days had created an unusual sense of unity, but uncertainty still lingered in the air. Clint stood quietly at the side of the room, watching as the last few staff members filed in. He noticed how the usual rigid seating divisions had softened somewhat. Progressive and traditional employees no longer clustered in entirely separate groups. Small changes, but significant ones. The hotel's current manager began the meeting with routine announcements, but everyone could sense something different was coming. When Clint finally stepped to the front of the room, The subtle murmurs of conversation fell silent. Even those who had interacted with him over the past few days straightened in their seats, sensing the gravity of the moment. "Over the past few days," Clint began, his voice carrying its characteristic quiet authority, "I've had the privilege of working alongside many of you. I've made beds with the housekeeping staff, carried luggage with the bellhops, and shared coffee breaks in the employee cafeteria." He paused, making eye contact with various staff members who had welcomed him into their daily routines. "But I haven't been entirely honest about who I am," he continued. "My name is Clint Eastwood, and I recently became the owner of this hotel." The revelation sent a wave of gasps through the room. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, while James sat up straighter in his chair. Clint could see the wheels turning in their minds as they reconsidered every interaction they'd had with him. "I chose to spend this time among you because I needed to understand something important," Clint explained, his tone remaining warm and conversational despite the shock in the room. "I needed to see firsthand how tradition and progress were coexisting in this place we all care about." He moved away from the podium, choosing instead to walk among the seats as he spoke. "What I discovered was both challenging and inspiring. I saw the tension between preserving our elegant heritage and embracing necessary change, but more importantly, I saw the potential for something extraordinary." Clint stopped near the center of the room. "Yesterday, with the visit from Mr. Blackwood, you showed what's possible when different perspectives work together. The traditional excellence that has always defined this hotel didn't conflict with our progressive values. It enhanced them." Turned to address the entire room. "The true measure of luxury isn't just in our material offerings, it's in how we make people feel valued and respected. Sometimes that means maintaining time-honored traditions that give guests a sense of elegance and stability. Other times it means evolving to ensure everyone feels welcomed and included." The tension in the room had transformed into focused attention as Clint outlined his vision for the hotel's future. He described specific initiatives that would blend traditional service excellence with progressive ideals. Training programs that would pair experienced staff with newer employees, regular forums for open dialogue about hotel policies, and a commitment to celebrating both heritage and innovation. "But I'm not here to impose changes from above," Clint emphasized. "I'm here to support the positive changes I've already seen beginning among you. Each of you brings valuable perspective to this hotel, whether you've been here for decades or joined us recently." As he spoke, Clint noticed Sarah and James exchange glances, a silent acknowledgement of their recent collaborative efforts. Other staff members were nodding, some with tears in their eyes, as they recognized their own experiences in his words. "Starting today," Clint announced, "we'll be implementing some changes, but not in the way you might expect." He outlined a series of initiatives that would give staff from all backgrounds more voice in hotel operations. Traditional employees would help shape how new inclusive policies were implemented, while progressive staff would contribute to preserving and updating classic service standards. The meeting concluded with an unexpected gesture. Clint invited Sarah and James to join him at the front of the room, symbolically bridging the gap between the hotel's past and future. Together, they shared their experiences from the past few days, demonstrating how different perspectives could strengthen rather than divide the hotel. As the staff filed out of the conference room, the atmosphere had transformed. There was a new energy in the air, a sense of possibility that hadn't existed before. Employees who had barely spoken days ago were now engaged in animated conversations about the future. Later that evening, Clint stood in the hotel lobby, observing the subtle but significant changes already taking place. The progressive receptionist was explaining a traditional service technique to a new employee, while a veteran staff member enthusiastically discussed updated inclusion policies with his team. Looking out through the grand windows at the lossy, Angeles sunset, Clint felt satisfied. The hotel wasn't just finding a balance between tradition and progress, it was creating something new and valuable from both. As the golden light faded into dusk, he knew that while challenges would still arise, the foundation had been laid for a truly exceptional future.